feel a really deep connection to my ancestors and the different lineages that I'm part of. The way that all of these practices have an element of fire that's so important, tending to the sacred fires. And the sacred fires being the hearth, that they exist within every home, within every family, within every project, within every workplace, within every community, that at the center there is this fire that burns, and it burns with this energy of transformation. When I was asked, how do I tend to this sacred fire? What came through for me is that it's by bringing the language of ritual, the language of energy, and the language of intuition into everything that I do, and therefore more into the world. Hello, dear community. I feel like we have been on such an unfolding. Some of us over the 7 years of this podcast, some over the 14 years of this project, some over a lifetime, and some of us are just connecting together now, weaving together our dreams, visions, and stories. We had our team time earlier this week, welcoming our new member Lise after we wished Annegret well on her way. For this episode, number 222, we felt that I could just press record and share something from the heart. And this is what came through. It's raw and was recorded at midnight in the stillness. If you would like to go on a journey together, I am hosting a live 6 weeks of Reclaim Your Intuition, which will start in early November and finish before we get into the winter solstice. It's going to be a beautiful and personal space where we work together one-to-one, as well as with the group calls and the group holding. And you go through the weeks learning new tools and games to strengthen your intuition, as well as 6 practices that can literally change your life, your brain health, your way of seeing the world, and your overall sense of yourself. And you will receive 4 rituals that you do yourself so that you learn this language, which includes tree whispering, as well as a creative invitation. I would so love to share this with you. It's online and you can take part from anywhere in the world. And there'll be a way for us all to connect and share during the time together. And I've made it as immersive as possible. And so there are things from here that you can take into your daily life so that this dynamic relationship with your intuition blooms everywhere. And it becomes something that is just so innately part of who you are. You can find out more about that if you go to allthatweare.org. And this is also where you can find out more about what's happening as we reimagine Presence Collective as a space that's supportive and nurturing and has a real level of aliveness. We haven't quite got there yet with feeling into the right timing as well as the best way to offer this. But if you're not already on our newsletter, do join at allthatweare.org, where we share more about this, and then you can be part of it as it comes together. I have also reopened my diary for one-to-ones every week if you wish to work with me in that space of energy, integrating trauma patterns and planting new seeds. You can find this as well as more about ceremonies at amisha.co.uk. I want to make this invitation if you enjoy these podcasts and All That We Are, and what we share here, and it means something to you, please do write to us, connect with us, and deepen in the journey with us. It's always such a gift to hear from you and feel the reciprocity and aliveness of this work. You will be surprised, but I don't hear from that many of you in the day-to-day. And I always appreciate so much connecting and us learning and growing and deepening together. I hope that this episode, 222, gives you a spark of hope, light, and stillness in the midst of it all. It's called Tending to the Hearth in a World Ablaze, the language of ritual, energy, and intuition. Welcome to All That We Are, with me, your host, Amisha Tala Oak. On this show, we explore the weave between activism, the sacred, creativity, and regeneration, the spaces where our inner and outer worlds dance. From healing trauma to nature connection, to new technologies, to ancient wisdom, it's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a more beautiful future. Despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to listen, to ask ourselves the big questions and to share what we are already doing and envisioning, we create the futures of our wildest dreams, and we begin to embody all that we are becoming, and all that is possible. I was asked recently by the wonderful Katie Abbott of Pause Place a question something like, what is it that you most want to protect? And she was asking the question in a framing of like, what is the energy, the values that you hold most dear, that you feel that you are here to bring protection to? And I find the word protection really interesting because it could be like, what am I creating? What am I here to create? And of course, here we talk a lot about the futures of our wildest dreams. There's often something within those futures, within those visions, that is ancient, that is something that we know deep in our bones, is a way of being that has existed before, and perhaps it exists in other cultures, or perhaps it existed in this one at one time. And what came through for me when I was answering this question was very clearly about protecting the sacred fires, tending to the sacred fires. And the sacred fires being the hearth, that they exist within every home, within every family, within every project, within every workplace, within every community, that at the center there is this fire that burns. And it burns with this energy of transformation. And it is so potent and so sacred. And in the embers, our ancestors and our future in the flames. And in the world and society and culture that we live in, the dominant society, what we find is that there is no sacred fire that is being tended to. There is no fire in the center of every conversation or every decision that's made. We certainly don't operate our political system around a sacred hearth that we're all tending to. For me, I feel within that knowing of the importance of this fire, I feel a really deep connection to my ancestors and the different lineages that I'm part of. The way that all of these practices have an element of fire that's so important. In Indian cultures, just like in the church, there's often a flame lit. In Hindu temples and homes, we have arti, which is a celebration and an honoring of light that is done every single day. It's an offering of light, an expression of one's complete and unflinching love towards the sacred. It is known as the light that removes the darkness. It's moved in a circular motion before the deity. And this is done often twice a day in homes and temples, bringing in every element, the flowers for earth, water for the water, the ghee lamp for the fire, the chama for the air, the chiming bell for ether, space, and then bringing the mind, the intelligence, and the sacred aspect of us. And it's an offering of our own understanding of where we're ignorant and the darkness and the shadow in us, so that we are bringing illumination to it. And when I was asked, how do I tend to this sacred fire, what came through for me is that it's by bringing the language of ritual, the language of energy, and the language of intuition into everything that I do, and therefore more into the world. And that is so much what the work in the world and the spaces that I offer are for, to reconnect us to these languages. I was at the most beautiful moon lodge on this full moon. We were sharing what having a space like this, where women of all ages can come together around an altar and a candle, a fire in the center, share what's happening and tune into the rhythms of the moon and the wisdom of the moon. And we were asked to share what we were grateful for. What is it that being in these kind of spaces has done for us? And for me, it's that the language of ritual is a language that we all know how to speak. And I have been in so many spaces now with so many different ages and nationalities and walks of life, where when a ritual truly begins, when a ceremony truly begins, we just know, we understand it in some very ancient part of ourselves. And we're able to join in and speak that language, even if we don't fully understand what's happening, even if the actual ceremony is one that is new to us or outside of our culture or something that we've never done before. I was offering a ritual to a dear friend of mine, also in the same full moon, who is preparing to give birth. And we did a beautiful baby blessing with her two daughters, who weren't sure about sitting still and concentrating and being in that kind of space. But we found a way to make it really fun and open that space for them to connect. And then they really got into it, because often it's just the invitation. What I know is that these languages of intuition, of energy, of ritual, is that they're languages that we can all speak. And for me, they're languages that keep me sane in a world that is extraordinarily hard to be part of at some times. As we pass the year mark of witnessing every single day on our phones this horrific genocide, and we're seeing more and more money go towards it, and now we're seeing the violence spread from Gaza to Lebanon, there's a part of me that doesn't know how to process that. And there's a part of me that wants to look away at times, that can't believe what I'm seeing, knowing that all of those people are someone's brother, someone's dad, someone's uncle, someone's grandfather, someone's son, someone's daughter, someone's mother, someone's aunt, someone's grandmother, and not quite being able to imagine the fear and the utter destruction. And one thing I know that I can do, as well as show up at protests and sign petitions and write to my MP, is to connect in the way of energy and ritual, is to send energy and love and prayers to the people that I see when I look at my phone and I see that violence. To know that I can communicate to their souls. To know that me sending my love isn't nothing. It's a complicated time to be alive, because when we hear stories of wars of days gone by, or even when I think about what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan in my 20s, it seemed so far away, and I only saw images of soldiers and photographs in the newspaper. I didn't see the deep footage of people like you and me going about their lives, being so impacted. And the images that we're seeing, they remind all of us of the Holocaust and the horrific documentaries and movies that we've seen around that. And we always ask that question, what would you have done if you were alive at that time? I remember meeting this incredible rabbi many years ago now. It would have been perhaps in my late 20s. And I was at the Global Economic Symposium, and I was doing some interviews as part of the youth delegation there. And I met this amazing rabbi, and he was telling me about how his parents gave him as a baby to someone else and it saved him. And he was telling me the story, a man in his 60s, 70s, and he still cried every time he told that story of the love and the kindness that he received by complete strangers that allowed him to live. So it just feels important to say, if you're struggling, if you find it too much, if it brings up rage and sadness and grief and a sense of helplessness, that's totally normal in these conditions. Thank you for listening. If you are enjoying this episode, please do get more involved. You can do this by joining our membership, Presence Collective, where we explore deeper how to create beauty in the mess. And you can find details of our experiences such as Reclaim Your Intuition, Beautiful Leadership Mentoring, and our in-person retreats. By joining in and being an active member of this community, you support the making of this show, keeping the episodes full length, free and accessible for all, so we can stay advertising free in a world that is always trying to sell us stuff we don't need. Other ways that you can connect into the ecosystem is by sharing these episodes with those in your life and dropping us a note from time to time. Head to allthatweare.org to get involved. I was talking to someone about flying planes and, carbon footprint. And then I was thinking about the 70,000 tons of explosives that's been dropped on Gaza and the impact that that's having on the earth and the climate. And then how can we think about the impact of a flight or a plastic bag, especially when it feels like everything is moving into this more space. When I remember the relationship that we have with our clothes, when I started working in sustainable fashion, again, this would have been about 17 years ago. And at that time, we were talking about fast fashion and throwaway fashion. but it was nothing like it is now. Now we're here in the era of Amazon and in the era of just more information, more posts, more platforms. We're here with AI coming in and brains that find it harder to focus. And this is why it is so important that we tend to our nervous systems, and that we make space for the sacred, and that we learn how to really listen to those deep messages from our soul. Because if we don't even notice the ways in which we get disconnected from our true selves, and we get overloaded, and we get discombobulated. I don't think it's possible to have a fully regulated nervous system in these times. But I do feel it's possible to tend to our nervous systems, to make space each day for doing things that truly support us, to make space to compost some of the more intense energies that are running through us and around us, to make space to integrate our shadows and our trauma patterns so that we can be more connected to the truth of who we are. And this is why it's so important that we do reclaim our intuition, that we learn how to live from that intelligence that lives inside of us, that we learn how to live from a place of both the rational and the intuitive intelligence, knowing that the rational has been tended to and taught and practiced, and that the intuitive needs more energy and attention because it hasn't been respected in the dominant culture. And more than being disrespected, it's been pushed down. And we've lived in a culture that makes it dangerous to connect with the earth, to know about herbs on the land and how they can bring vibrancy to humans, to know how to heal and support each other. I feel that those of us that are living on this side of reality, where we're not in war zones, where our lives have so much choice, so much possibility, so many distractions, it's really important for both our ancestors and our future generations that we learn how to cultivate a relationship with our intuition and with the unseen world so that we can communicate at a whole different level, so that we can understand deeper layers of reality and what's happening, so that we can trust the insights and wisdom in our bodies and in our hearts, so that we can trust when something feels off, that it is, so that we can make courageous choices that uplift our communities and the rights of humans everywhere, so that we can make courageous choices for our own healing and the healing and safety and love of those around us, so that we can make courageous choices that connect us deeper to the earth and the wisdom of nature and all the plant life that speaks through us, and so that we can recognize and honor that we are also part of that nature, that we are also an expression of this earth and this cosmos. It's actually not that hard to remember. We don't have to do that much, but we do have to tend to that sacred fire. One of the beautiful humans that I'm working with at the moment, with beautiful leadership mentoring, and we do these sessions, the with energy work. After one session, she said to me that she'd had this experience of walking through a busy square that's normally really noisy and, busy and not so pleasant to be in. Suddenly she had this psychedelic experience where she could see and feel everyone dancing and moving with the music that was playing. And it lasted just a few moments, but it was enough to show her that we are part of this experience, this interconnected, beautiful life that is sacred. I find sometimes it can be exhausting in this modern world with the industrial wellness complex and the whole crazy world of social media and everything. It's really hard to tend to those spaces of real depth or to explain what it means to come into these spaces where these languages are spoken of energy, of ritual, and of intuition. And just like anywhere you go, if you spend enough time there, you pick up the language, right? And if, like me, you struggle with the vocabulary, you understand the feeling of the language. You understand how the language works and how it's expressed. I've been offering this kind of work for a really long time. I had my trilogy of near-death experiences over 20 years ago now. And I started my first official meditation night. It was called Sunday Night Soul in an East London studio. It must have been around 11 years ago, having felt that call to host these spaces where we could come in and speak in these languages and drop all the masks and the other layers and the time-filling conversation and just kind of come and connect straight into this place of depth and love and honoring. It was around the same time I started to invite my friends from different cultures together to join me to celebrate Diwali. And we would have these beautiful rituals, chanting and sharing intentions for the new beginning with giant sparklers. In some cultures, we just have to work a little bit harder to create these spaces of community and belonging, to create these spaces of communication with the sacred. And in those kind of spaces, we can touch what's wild in each of us and tend to our bodies and our hearts, our communities, our collective. And there is beauty everywhere, especially in these turning times, in these times of what some say are purification or end times. Whatever words you give to these times, they are deeply challenging. And they require us to approach them slightly differently, to understand the cycles of death and rebirth, and to allow them in ourselves so that we can expand in our resilience and our love and our understanding of what might be asked of us of this time, of what happens if we take our focus off all of the noise and listen within. And what happens if we take our focus off getting it right and over-analyzing ourselves and each other, and instead dig deep within ourselves, make space and time to listen to our souls, to relearn these sacred languages of intuition, of energy, of ritual, so that we can form that trust within ourselves when our day-to-day is so gaslit by the systems And so that we can bring that level of connection and personal touch into our lives and the lives of those that we love. That we can know about ourselves that we don't have to turn away when it's hard, that we don't have to run and hide, but that we can indeed do hard things and we can indeed love more than we imagined is possible. And that we can keep our hearts open and be courageous enough to feel and be courageous enough to remind each other of our beauty, of our humanity, of our shared interest and responsibility in this living earth. We have to reclaim these languages. We have to tend to these sacred fires. And we have to lift each other up when we see each other get wary and weary. We must create beauty in the mess. I know that for many of you, these times are so testing. I've just had the most difficult year of my life, and I feel like I've been saying that for a good few years now. And yet, having tasted that level of challenge and pain and grief, I find that I've learned a deeper love and a deeper knowing of the unseen, and a deeper connection to my intuition, and a deeper wilding into the beauty of what it is to be here. And that's what I wanted to offer here in this space of all that we are. It's a sacred remembrance. Sometimes it's easy to get lost in concepts and playing into the whole, are we getting it right? Are we doing enough? Who has the answers? And I really want to thank you for being part of this All That We Are community and joining us in this space that is, not so commercial, not so typical. And as ever, I invite you to step deeper, come deeper in the ways that we can, interact together. Because for me, that's the greatest joy of this offering, where we get to connect in the different spaces and we get to meet. Thank you for being here and for spending this time with me and with us. Thank you for listening. We hope that you have enjoyed this episode and it has sparked some inspiration and creativity in you. As always, you can find links to everything we mention in this episode, download our book, join our experiences, and discover so much more over on allthatweare.org. We give space to our guests to share their perspective without debating it or fact-checking, as this approach allows for deep, unedited conversations from the heart. We trust your discernment and wisdom to take what is useful and challenge what isn't in your own understanding. We offer spaces for discussion and integration in our membership community, which we would love for you to join. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast. And so it's made possible with you, our beautiful community. If you loved this and would like to connect more deeply with us, please join our membership, retreats, and experiences. Share the episode with your friends and do drop us a note from time to time. Please hit subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen so that others can find us. This podcast is made by an all-female global team. All That We Are celebrates all that we are already and the untapped potential that lives inside us. It invites the full power of the more than human world, nature, the unseen, our ancestors, and our future generations. It reminds us that we never exist in silos through borders, timelines, or polarity. That in each and every moment, all that we are is here.